Hello and welcome to the main event today, where we're asking, can technology keep airports flying? We have an action-packed agenda with some great speakers and some big topics. Today is hosted by Quba, and we have Matthew Williams, the CEO of Quba, co-hosting the event today. Matthew, can you tell us a little bit about the topics today, please?
Yeah, of course, Jonny. Thanks. So at Quba, we've been working with London Luton Airport for over 8 years, and with Birmingham Airport really more recently in the last few years, and in both cases to really help these airports develop their digital capability. And I guess during that time, we've seen some big changes in the sector and really some challenging periods as well. But it looks like, you know, the impression that we're getting at the moment from the media and generally in the marketplace is that, you know, there's a period of growth expected. A lot of questions about how that's going to be delivered. There's obviously been a lot in the media about it, but I think what's more pertinent to Quba is to try and delve into, you know, how that growth is going to be supported by digital technologies, digital capabilities, and other technologies, to be honest. So we felt like getting some of our clients together today to do a roundtable to sort of explore some of those issues in relation to digital would be a really good thing to do. So this is why we're here.
Okay, so we are going to be moving on swiftly to our panel discussion. And I'd like to introduce our colleagues from Birmingham and Luton Airports, who are probably just going to be coming on screen shortly. We have Joe, who's Head of Corporate Affairs and Marketing at Birmingham Airport. We have Ollie, who's Director of Corporate Affairs at London Luton Airport. We have Leon, Senior Digital Marketing and E-commerce Manager at London Luton Airport. And we have Stuart, who's Head of Customer Strategy at Birmingham Airport. Welcome, everybody. We're going to start off relatively high level, and we're going to talk about growth. And as Matthew was alluding to in the introduction, you know, growth is in the headlines, right? I mean, yesterday there was Gatwick's runway announced, which was approved, and you know, it's non-stop in the media at the moment. So we're going to look at what growth looks like in the airport sector from your perspectives, and what the big challenges are that you see. So, who would like to ask that question? Answer the question. Ollie, do you want to go first, Ollie?
Jonny? I thought I'd get in quick, you see, then I can go everybody else for the rest of the hour. But firstly, thank you to yourself and Matthew for hosting us. It's great. And good afternoon to anybody that's listening. Delighted to be part of this chat. And so, yeah, it's a really broad question, Jonny, but you're not wrong. Growth and expansion at airports has certainly been filling up the headlines. But I mean, in terms of your question around, you know, what does growth for the sector look like? What are the challenges? I think it's fair to say that as a sector, we have our fair share of headwinds and challenges. You've already touched on a couple of them. So COVID, you know, that had the sector on its knees for a long time. If you look what's going on across the globe in terms of geopolitics, you look at Ukraine, the Middle East, of course, all of these impact on things like demand. You've mentioned sustainability. Of course, you know, it's imperative that as a sector we decarbonize, but as a sector that's hard to abate, that's not easy. You've now got the sort of cost of living pressures. You've got this rapidly changing political and policy environment. And of course, you've got the technological revolution that's changing the face of every sector. So, you know, there's a huge amount going on and as a sector that we face. But I think the one constant amongst all of that is people have a need and want to fly. So demand continues to grow and it's predicted to carry on growing. So that makes this period really exciting. And the outlook is therefore hugely positive. I think I'll just sort of end by saying, bringing it back on today's theme around technology and digital. I think the rapid technological advancements that we're seeing will absolutely be a key enabler to keep the sector moving forward. You know, you've picked up on sustainability, and I'm thinking how technology is going to help us unpack our complex airspace modernization challenge. It's going to help produce the future aircraft that are low or zero carbon, or even indeed enable us to capture carbon. And then, of course, you know, improving our infrastructure, optimizing the processes so that we can be more efficient, process more people more quickly. And of course, all of that will ultimately end up benefiting the consumer, the passenger, as those processes become slicker and more streamlined.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. That's really, really appreciated. And Joe, what about from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo all of the points that Ollie's made. There is growth in the sector, and it's very, very, very exciting. I would say that aviation sector has proven itself as incredibly resilient as well. So we do have knocks, but the industry as a whole is very, very able in picking itself up and getting back to pre-knock levels pretty quickly. So I completely agree with all of the points that Ollie's raised. I think the areas though that, you know, when we talk about technological advances, and if you look at what we have achieved since we've started first commercial flights, you know, we've got the A380 up in the skies, we've delivered Concorde, you know, we've now got e-passports. The way that we screen people and baggage, it's just remarkable considering, you know, the first flight from Heathrow took off from a tent on a heath. So we've come so far, but the two areas that we seem to be incredibly sluggish in are actually the two areas that are going to be absolutely critical to continuing airports and aviation, the business case on growth. And that is things that Ollie has touched upon. Airspace modernisation, you know, that has not been changed since the 1950s. And if you think that it was first created when there was around 200,000 commercial flights every year, is now 2.4 million, and we haven't changed any of the motorways in the skies. So we are now incredibly inefficient in how we use aircraft in the skies at a time when we've got a carbon crisis. We've got thousands and thousands and thousands of flights up in the air unnecessarily flying. So that needs to be completely modernized, because it was only recently that air traffic controllers were using paper-based methods, which is absolutely insane when you think about that. And then the sustainable aviation fuel in particular, with the way that we decarbonize the industry. It's not a nice to have. We've got to make progress in this area. We know that the technology works. And to Ollie's point, you know, there is a very quick and rapid policy making program at the moment, but what they aren't doing with the ministers is providing the green light to the industry to start creating at scale, because that is what is going to take the carbon out of flying. But we are very, very slow in that. But the time is now. We've got the 7th carbon budget that's just come out. We've got to make significant headwind with this by 2050. So we've got to clean up the skies. We've got to clean up the planes. And then we will just continue with growth. And how we process, and then the challenge will be obviously operationally, how we process that demand, and what kind of experience that we deliver with that demand coming through.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Joe. I'm going to go a little bit of a level down, in lower logical level, into slightly just another sort of technical, slightly technical subject, and next generation security checkpoints. Can we just have a quick conversation around that? Because talking about the, you know, proposed or the expected increase in passenger numbers, and I think the government put it, you know, going up to 500 and something million passengers, which is a huge increase. And obviously, next generation security checkpoints were a thing that were proposed, and that would help get people through. Can we just touch on that very briefly? Because there's conversations here around, you know, there's government policy, and then there's potential changes to that policy. There's implementation deadlines which move and things like that. But this is an important technology that's come in to help passengers move through airports very, very quickly. And what are the perspectives on this initiative?
I'll quickly touch upon where we are at Birmingham. So NGS, Next Gen Security, basically, we launched it last year. We hit the government deadline, and you are right. It's the next generation of screening, and the benefits of it is the capacity to process significant numbers of passengers at speed when they work. And it's like with every bit of technology that we use, it is reliant on lots of systems working together, and also how passengers interact with it as well. These machines, because of the government changes to the rules, where we thought we'd be able to go through with up to 2 litres, then changed to 100 mils, the technology still does require compliant behaviour. And so whilst the technology is brilliant in terms of zooming an awful lot of passengers through, with our new lanes going live in a couple of weeks, we'll have the ability to scan up to over 3,500 passengers per lane per hour. Sorry, 3.5 passengers per hour. So it is remarkable, the speed in which it's been done, but people do still need to understand what the machines and the technology expect of them in order to work seamlessly. So it's great throughput, it's great for efficiency, but like everything with technology, it's got to work.
Yeah, and there's also the sort of disruption of the implementation as well, right? I mean, it's great if it's working perfectly, and if you could snap your fingers and it was there, then it would be an amazing thing. But then there's the adjustments as well, going through that sort of implementation phase, especially with slightly, you know, wobbly policy from government. That's a really tough journey to go through, I think, for any airport implementing any technologies really, but NGS particularly. And so, Ollie, what's your perspective?
Yeah, again, you'll hear a lot of similar things between Birmingham and Luton because we're all doing the same thing. But you know, look, next gen security is the biggest change to airport security in probably almost 20 years. So it is very significant, and it's been enabled through technology. The processing power and the imaging but that sits behind it is literally mind-blowing. Now, people won't get to see that for obvious reasons, but those that do will be blown away. And you know, and the benefits of this are, you know, several-fold, in that the first thing the passenger is going to see is they no longer have the inconvenience of taking liquids and laptops and your shoes off your feet and things out of your bag. It's designed to enable you to pass through security in a much more seamless, quick way. But to Joe's point, when it's working and everyone agrees on how it should be working, but let's put the politics to one side, the technology is working and it's proven that it can deliver the secure, safe environment that it's designed to achieve. And in terms of processing power, we're now seeing an effective doubling in the number of passengers that we can process in any given time. And there's some real value to us as an airport for that, of course, as well as the benefits to the consumer in being able to pass through incredibly quickly without the inconvenience. What it means that we've got on the other side is passengers that are probably less stressed, now have more time to peruse the shops and the food and beverage units. So, you know, there's also benefits for us. And of course, the way that we can deploy the technology means we can also be more efficient in terms of resourcing. So there's also cost savings, you know, in terms of OPEX. Clearly, there's a significant capital investment to pay for all of this new equipment. But over the long term, you know, we'll see the benefits of that. And the feedback's been really positive. You know, consumers generally really enjoy it. But I think I'll just pick up on the point that Joe made, that you can't just have technology as the silver bullet. You know, what's been essential with our deployment of next gen has very much been the people element. It's getting our staff to accept the change, the new technology, the new ways of working. We've had to look at the processes so that passengers can interact with that technology in a really frictionless way. And of course, communication, good old-fashioned communication, has been at the center of making that whole transition quite smooth.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Now, Matthew, I think you were going to ask a question.
Yeah, I wanted to see, really get into a bit more of conversation around the passenger experience, particularly in relation to kind of digital channels, you know, apps, screens, kiosks, any way that passengers will interact with content through digital channels, and how those will enhance the passenger experience and potentially increase revenue as well, I guess. And I think I think that question perhaps is more directed towards Stuart and Leon. So first of all, Stuart, if I could ask you, how do you see things panning out with regards to that question?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, great to be here. So, great question. It's key to our strategy at the airport. So, we're really fortunate that pre-COVID we invested heavily in technology. So, we understand our customers' journeys, we understand how long they spend in each part of the terminal. We implemented a state-of-the-art voice to customer system. So, we actually actively listen to our customers' feedback at 80 locations throughout our terminal. So, this allows us to really understand where there's friction in that journey and where we need to put support into that journey, either physical or digital. And I think what our strategy now is based on, we call it connected personal experiences. And our strategy really is to make journeys easy and accessible for all customers, focusing on those vulnerable customers who need assistance or those traveling with families. I have kids and I know the airport, and it's stressful when I've got my kids with me. So actually, if I make the airport really accessible and easy for those who are most vulnerable, by actually putting really good technology solutions to the airport to serve the masses, actually that frees up our colleagues to do exactly that. But our vision really at Birmingham is to put technology in orientation. We're calling it orientation hubs, really. So at key moments throughout that journey, there's these orientation moments. They beam like satellites, they attract our customers to them. And actually we want to reassure the customers you only need to know this. Don't worry about the rest of your journey. We'll hold your hand throughout the whole journey. At this moment, you need to know the next step of your journey is this. If you need support with this, ask us a question. And actually, we've got Babs, Birmingham Airport Bot Service, and Babs will answer questions. And we use AI, and it's plugged into all the airport's brains and information, so they can write in plain language, in any language, their exact question, and then it will come back and tell them hopefully the answer they want. And that could be, how do I get to check-in? How do I get to security? Can I get a burger? Yes, you can. Go here. And we really want that to be almost like a personal assistant for the majority of our customers. But at that moment, if it can't help and it identifies you as a vulnerable customer, actually what it will do then is connect to a live agent, and the live agent can either support remotely, or we can then say, actually, we need a customer ambassador to go to this location and support this customer through their journey. So we're going into pilots this year with this technology. We think it's going to really revolutionize the way people use our airport. It can add, I think, from the customer point of view, it will really add value to their experiences, but also from an efficiency point of view, an operational point of view, we can really use our resources best. So we know, instead of just having roaming customer experience ambassadors through the terminal, we can really use them and put them in the key moments where the customer genuinely needs that support. Yeah, so really that's where we're going with our technology. It's a big move forward for us. And I think going back to growth, the growth allows this. So actually the growth allows airports to invest further, because we need to make our airports an experience, an environment customers want to be in. So this allows for that.
Wow, that's amazing. I look forward to using that. It sounds
Yeah.
like having a friend next to you in the airport.
Yeah, Babs will be there for you.
Leon, can I ask you the same question, Leon? You know, what's your kind of approach or strategy towards using digital channels in the future or currently?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for having me. So we come at it from similar angle, but slightly different in that obviously we want to offer personalized, seamless passenger experiences as well. We start it from a slightly different angle in that we believe first you need to understand the unmet needs, what are the different needs in the various different parts of the journey. But to get to that, we do a significant amount of research to understand where we currently stand with our passengers, what are the gaps and what are the opportunities to improve. And we treat the experience as starting from weeks before travel and then ending once you're back at home and back sat on your sofa reminiscing about your next travel opportunity. So we think about what do we need to communicate to our passengers early on to prepare them for travel. We talked about next gen security just now, what are the communications we need to send out, and when do they need to reach them at the right time. And the potential for digital channels, in my view, is as large as the audience you can actually reach. That's the key thing for me. So how do you actually reach more of your passengers and turn them from unknown to known, to actually be able to deliver these experiences throughout their journey? And I think that's been one of the biggest challenges in an airport, because that relationship is generally owned by the airline. So, what's the reason for a passenger to engage with you? What's the value exchange, in essence? So we're doing a lot of work around giving those incentives for passengers to register with us, share their data, share their itinerary, and from there we can start to take that understanding, look at what's benefited other passengers with similar profiles, and start to engage with them in a similar fashion to ensure that they have a frictionless journey from end to end. And once they get to the other end and back on the sofa, we want to try and understand what was their experience, what's the feedback we can garner from that to improve. And of course, we want to understand when they're next going to travel so we can start that whole life cycle again.
Interesting you mentioned about getting to know your customer, first party data, but first party knowledge about your actual customer experience. And can I ask a quick question about how sort of beacon and location based technology is helping you with that?
Yeah, so we've had beacon technology in the airport for quite some time now. So in the moment, it obviously provides things like live queue times, etc., so we can manage the flow of the airport and share that information with customers so they can actually manage their own expectations, take that anxiety away, because we actually have been transparent with them about their journey through there. But actually, from a historical point of view data, that's where it helps us really be strategic about the plans for the future of our airport, the dwell times people spend, where we get high levels of congestion, where people tend to move throughout the terminal. And what it really tells us, and we don't know anything about the person as an individual, we don't take any data like that, we see as a dot in our airport. However, what it does do is afterwards we can profile a bit more and see how different type of airline customers use our airport. So one type of airline may use the lounges, like the business lounges, more than another type. And actually that can really help us from a commercial point of view understand what retail offerings would be suitable, what should we invest in, what are people wanting to spend time in. So that's where we use it really. And the exciting thing moving forward, I think, is this will inform how we develop infrastructure of the airport, but also things like virtual queues. So virtual queues will become quite a big thing, I think, in the future. So currently, a lot of airports have express lanes, which you pay for a service. Well, actually, virtual queues, a bit like when you go to Alton Towers or somewhere, actually, if you could go, I'm going to arrive at this time, and actually I want to book a time slot at this. With our beacon technology, we can really use that to go, yes, that's a perfect time for you to slot in. You will get to your virtual queue at this time, and you'll get through security within 10 minutes. And actually, from a resource point of view, that lets us plan our resource more effectively. We can then do really cool things from a customer experience point of view. Instead of having dedicated express lanes for business travelers or families or assisted travel, actually the customer won't know they've been profiled, but actually all of a sudden we're putting like-minded people like families who are all like, oh gosh, isn't this stressful? Oh, my kid's being annoying, but actually they can talk together and actually calm each other down, and they can go through and share that experience together. We can put a more trained customer experience people within those areas. So actually people who really understand families and children, have that more relaxed time with them, having some empathy with them. And then actually on our assisted travel lanes, we can put some really highly skilled people on there who really understand the needs of those customers, those most vulnerable going through. But the customer never knows this is happening. But actually from using beacon technology and virtual queues together, we create this really seamless, enjoyable experience for our customers, which is much more operationally efficient for our operational teams to manage.
So absolutely, yeah, that's an incredible idea. I love that. It reminds me of Disney.
Yeah, I love Disney. That's where we go.
The kids, Dad, why haven't we got a fast pass? I'm like, oh, be quiet. They're like $1,000. No, that's really great. That's a really brilliant idea, actually. And Leon, what about you from Luton's side?
I was going to say, we actually already running a pilot for that kind of pre-book security, we're calling it. So you can book a half-hour slot within security, and we're currently updating that just now, and the data is quite interesting there. It's definitely an interest in doing it, and definitely helps people relax before they go through security, obviously. So location generally, obviously, beacons is one method of capturing location data, but don't ignore other sources of data as well, and how you can combine that with what you already know about passengers. So, for example, the example I like giving is, generally we capture data through people parking. So someone's booked a car park with us. If we manage to capture their flight information as well, when they turn up at the car park, obviously their car reg is scanned at the barrier. So why can't we combine that data with our known passenger information and then start to make some interesting communications for them? So, for example, someone's got a small family of 3 with a young child. They've turned up 3 hours before their departure time. We can talk to them about, your shuttle bus is arriving at this time. Here's some child-friendly activities to carry out in the terminal, or some here's some interesting child menus you can explore at our restaurants and F&B outlets. And equally, if someone's turned up a little bit late and maybe a business traveller, we can tell them about fast track security and share them relevant information to get them through the processes as quickly as possible so they don't miss their flight and cause delays for other passengers, etc. So yeah, there's different ways to actually explore how you use location, and there's a whole range of use cases you can explore off the back of it. A lot of Stuart's covered already in the terminal experience.
Let's just quickly on that. That's an interesting point, Leon, from the perspective of recognizing types of passenger and being able to send messages in relation to airside retail outlets and food halls, etc., and presumably send incentives and that will encourage take up, I suppose, of those. Do you see that being able to that happening in the near future?
So we're working with our retail partners to build an understanding of the catalogue, and obviously once you have that, you can build a decisioning engine that will kind of feed into the right recommendations to make to particular types of passengers and what you know about them, the behaviour that you've seen before they travel. For example, if they've been on your website and perhaps browsed duty-free already and looked at a particular perfume, you can highlight an offer once they're kind of closer to that retailer itself. So yeah, it plays a key role in being able to surface the right message at the right time. Obviously, that we're more open to that message if the processes they've gone through earlier have been kind of seamless and easy and have not caused any stress. Then they can think about the next step around enjoying their time while waiting for their boarding gate to be announced.
Matthew, I was just sort of coming on the back of Leon's point there. I think the key for us is how can we put the passenger, or we refer to them as the guest, put them in control. And we do that, and the thing we're trying to build is a sort of an integrated, data-driven environment, but fundamentally that allows the guest to be in control. And the quid pro quo here is if we can create that environment, then that's where we can begin to extract the value that we're looking for, the most obvious one of those being, say, revenue. But the exchange with the consumer, the guest, is that their experience has been significantly improved. So it's a trade-off, but it's a win-win for both sides.
Yeah. I get a happy customer is more likely to engage with you in other areas. So, can I just jump in with a question, Jonny?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which was touched on a bit earlier, really, and it's something that has come up in conversations in development of projects with both your organisations. That's in relation to accessibility and the work that's been done, around the airports, but also using digital as well to help improve that experience for accessible travellers. I wonder if that's something we could just talk a little bit about how that's developing. I think that's probably a question for Joe or Ollie to start with.
Yeah, so accessible travel. Stuart and I were talking about this a couple of days ago, and it's an area that has gone through huge technological advances itself. And there's been huge benefits to that in that, travel has become more seamless to millions and millions more people. On the flip side of that, though, as we were saying, there is a bit of a downside in that because there has been such successes in accessible travel, this system now is under huge pressure. And technology needs to keep up with that and keep up with that pace and that demand. And so, the accessible travel area is a very specialist area, and it's something that Birmingham Airport outsources to a specialist provider who is keeping up to date with all the technological advances, whether it's handling equipment and just making sure that those journeys are safe and dignified and accessible for all. But it's an area that has gone through such change, is now creaking under the pressure because of the increase in demand, and it's an area that we have to keep up with it, because accessible travel is not an option. It has to be something that is provided for absolutely everybody, and especially the most vulnerable passengers.
It's a bit bittersweet, isn't it? That so many more passengers with greater accessibility needs are feeling that they can travel, but which is such a great thing.
It's amazing.
But yeah, so the sort of wave of new passengers is amazing. But at the same time, obviously, there's a lot more to do, and it's going to bend that system. So, but great to hear. And Ollie, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Joe. We're seeing a phenomenal increase in uptake. I mean, year on year, it's grown by 25%. So the numbers are sort of exponentially growing. But, you know, look, from our point of view, what's the role of technology in all of this? Well, airports are inherently challenging environments. And you think if there are different range of impairments that somebody might be challenged by, it's, you know, it's absolutely common sense that technology can really play a significant role in helping overcome some of these challenges. And funnily enough, Leon and I have been involved in a bit of an innovation startup program, and we saw about 40 different startups pitch their solution. And the one that was most powerful for me, that really sticks in my mind, it was a gentleman that was suffered with blindness, and he had developed with his team a navigation tool that enabled us to plug his tool into our environment, and that device in his hand would effectively steer him through the airport in an unencumbered way. And listening to his firsthand experiences that I could never comprehend was just so incredibly powerful. And then it made me just really realize the value of these sorts of tools. But it comes back to the old challenge around systems, integration, privacy, security, safety. It's an absolute minefield, and you wrap the layer of regulation that comes with an airport. You know, it's inherently challenging, but it's also dangerous. So there aren't easy solutions, but you know, clearly they're available, and as a sector, it's something that's only going to continue to grow and advance.
I mean, part of our research into airport accessibility opened our eyes to the fact that a huge proportion of what people told us, it's awareness and attitude towards accessibility as well. And I'm not sure you kind of resonate the same thing. Stuart, you're nodding.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm really privileged I get to work on our accessibility forum with great people. Andy Wright, I think he might be on here today. He's our chair. And I get to speak to people who live with conditions or experience conditions, who are allies for conditions. And I think that's the main thing. It's about being empathetic and open-minded and curious and challenging of what is best practice, and actually holding the mirror up to the organization, to the industry, and going, is this acceptable? I think I echo what Joe says, though. It's a hugely successful story. You know, 10 years ago, travel was difficult, and we've made it as easy and accessible as we can, but there's so much more to do. But I think it can be the simple things, like actually really understanding the wants and needs of our customers. You know, when a customer books their ticket with their airline provider, we're still using codes we created 10 years ago, and we give a code to a person, a letter. That letter does not tell me what that person needs. I can assume what it means, but actually, really, and this is why not one airport can fix this, because I think the risk at the moment is every airport is trying to do the best so they can offer the great service for people with additional needs. But actually, that means it's going to be inconsistent, and actually, customers are going to go from one airport and it's going to have this experience, another airport have another experience. We need industry change, and actually, we need a system that the gold standard would be where my information is on my passport, and actually I answer questions about everything I need during my travel or what I don't need, because sometimes we assume people need things which they don't. And actually I scan that and it tells the airport, this is Stuart, meet Stuart, this is what he requires when he comes to your airport. I can then look at that and go, hey Stuart, anything changed since you last filled in your details? No, perfect, we've got everything ready for you. Have a great journey through our airport. You know, that's where we need to get to. And unfortunately, one of the biggest frictions at the moment is our customers are having to repeat again and again and again what their requirements are. And how frustrating and exhausting is that? Is, you know, you've got to go through it again, like when you go to a call center, the dreaded call center where you've got to go to another agent now and tell them the same thing you told the agent previously. So that's what we've got to do. We've got to share this information. We've got to be allies of these people, and we've got to really believe and want to make travel accessible for all. So it's human. It's about being a human and having empathy to make the change that is required.
Matt, do you want to answer the next question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think with this one, we were thinking is really about the relationship between the airlines and the airports, and you know how collaboration between the two is occurring and helping the passenger experience, because you know, there's two sets of organizations that come together, obviously, in a stressful situation for a lot of passengers. And how is that kind of relationship working out and benefiting passengers? That question is perhaps more to Leon.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, with the travel experience being one experience, it's not kind of split between an airline and an airport for passengers. It's important that we work together on the common challenges. And obviously we need to uncover those common challenges first and understand how to what the real pain points are, what the opportunities are, similar to what I said earlier, and come together around the table to ideate solutions to those challenges, and do so in a kind of co-designing way that we all own the solution, and obviously then have the buy-in and the commitment to deliver it. We had a kind of a challenge internally ourselves around the kind of the gate experience recently, and we managed to work really closely with the likes of Wizz Air and EasyJet and their ground handlers to look at the gate experience, uncover the learnings that we needed to figure out, and from there make workshops together, run ideations, sessions, and then once we had those ideas, surface the ones that should be prioritized and run experiments to see actually will this work, will it have the impact that we want it to have. And we did that all jointly, and it's kind of worked seamlessly, and now we have a solution potentially going into implementation in the next few weeks and months that could improve the experience at gate quite significantly, reducing waiting time there by an average of 9 minutes across the Wizz Air flights, for example, which obviously doesn't sound perhaps too much when you think of it in isolation, but when you think that guest experience satisfaction levels start to dip after you've been waiting more than 10 minutes, it can play quite a significant role. So yeah, that's one example from us, and here's several examples across the board, really, across the industry around aircraft turnarounds. How can we digitize the timestamping of that? How can we use computer vision and AI to automate the timestamping, which then leads into how you can communicate the information to passengers. Even on the other side of the journey with turn-ups to, on the curb, what's the arrival profile of passengers, and how can we use that across check-in, security, gates to resource efficiently and just make sure again the experience is as well as it can be.
Thank you, Stuart. I know that you've got a lot of experience airline side as well, and you know, what are your kind of views on the sort of collaboration between, you know, yourselves and the airlines in terms of, you know, technology introductions?
Yeah, I think back a decade ago, actually, it was really siloed, and collaboration across airlines and airports was actually really challenging. I think actually, as we've moved on, that culture, because I think our industry is very easy to have a blame culture, because we all own so many different elements of that customer journey. But what we've done at our airport, and I think lots of airports doing the same, is really break that down and almost picture a relay race and actually go, let's have the baton. Let's keep passing it to each other, because that customer needs that consistent service throughout each touch point. And if it drops, don't go into this cycle of blame. Actually, how did it drop? What happened at that moment? Let's work collaboratively to fix that issue, because there's an issue in that part of the customer journey. And I think that's now we now have, you know, monthly formal meetings with all our airline partners. We have daily pre-briefs before the day starts about everything that's coming ahead that day. We have that really healthy system now, and from data, etc., our CSATs we share with our airline partners, or our MPS share, and then we do sit down in the room old-fashionedly, we get in there, we get a whiteboard, and we look at the data and the insights and go, right, why did that happen? How did that happen? How do we fix it? And I think that's the only way we can move forward. And I think actually we're in a really positive place. And even airport to airport, I speak to Luton Airport quite frequently. I speak to lots of my counterparts at their airports because yes, we are competition, but actually once the customer's in our building, that competition isn't there. Let's make sure we all offer the best services we possibly can, because if we do that, we actually enrich and improve the whole industry, which is great for everybody.
It's important you all get around the same service blueprint and you kind of work towards the common goals. I just want to add as well to the conversation that beyond airlines, obviously we have quite a complex ecosystem and various partners. You know, we touched on retailers and F&B outlets and a whole host of others as well. So it's important not to discount the importance of those relationships too.
Yeah, I definitely think alignment, you know, certainly from a, you know, I've got a very strong digital background, user experience background, and you know, if you can design a perfect experience, but if everyone else is used to this experience, then you know it's an absolute nightmare. So I think the alignment around airports on the basics, I think, is so fundamentally important for the broader consumer, especially consumers that, you know, passengers that do fly out of multiple airports. It's like, you know, a brand once a year, a brand will try and redesign the interface to an e-commerce site because they're all zany and crazy, and it will be an absolute flop because there is only one way to design an e-commerce site. Everyone wants it exactly the same. And it's that kind of thinking. But it's great to hear. And also in terms of the collaboration around accessibility as well. I think that's a really important thing, because that's not about competition. That's just about a broader opening for those people to be able to fly across any airport. And I think the sort of collaboration and sharing of that information is really to be celebrated. So that's yeah, that's really great. So can I just move on to another question? And I am conscious of time. We are going to be wrapping up relatively soon. But can we talk about AI? Because obviously the world, you know, the headlines are constantly now talking about AI and large language models and reasoning models and all sorts of things changing with facial detection and learning models and everything else. How will AI impact our experience as a passenger? How will it impact the experience going through an airport? And are there any kind of like real kind of warning signs or that you're seeing, or are there just benefits? What's the thinking? Leon, maybe you want to answer that first?
So the way I see it is, obviously AI gives you a great amount of power to really develop insights. You probably couldn't do so easily before and do it at scale. So we talked earlier about personalization, and when you talk about, you know, our airport, for example, 18, 19 million passengers, how can you scale out personalization without a tool like AI? It's quite difficult. So it offers that kind of enhancement. But also, it's a great tool to really build an understanding of, you know, things we touched on earlier around passenger flow and behavior within the terminal. So if you combine it with computer vision, you know, obviously with the right compliances in place, you know, privacy, etc., you can then start to really understand the performance of your operation, and you can identify bottlenecks you probably couldn't do without it. And the number of use cases are quite broad and quite incredible, really, when you start digging into it. You know, down to fingerprinting luggage through a photo, so you can track it through to the destination airport, and, you know, if it gets lost, it's quite easily tracked back. And we touched upon aircraft turnarounds and combining computer vision with AI again to timestamp that. And then you can start thinking about, you know, autonomous vehicles to kind of do the kind of delivery of baggage to the plane and other similar use cases, and making that more efficient. And it becomes quite a broad and big range of possibilities that can have an impact across the operation. And I think it's really important to obviously be able to have the right data foundations built in the first place. Also the kind of infrastructure around bandwidth to transfer that data to your various solutions to actually make these things happen. So it's quite exciting. There's also some challenges that we need to deal with to be able to get to a point where we can fully leverage it. We haven't really touched upon Gen AI and content creation and so on as well. So, yeah, if you imagine a guest experience ambassador within the terminal with a knowledge base that they can use to respond to a passenger, possibly in their own language, for example. And yeah, it's the whole range of possibilities is massive, as I kind of said.
And Stuart, from your point of view, you're obviously using some form of generative AI or reasoning models for your kind of tools that you're piloting. As well as talking about that, do you mind talking about, you know, potentially robotics as well? Because that's another area which is moving forward so unbelievably quickly. You know, from where we were 10 years ago to where we are now, it's a completely different world. Would you see you know, robots for either service utility or passenger experience being part of the show?
So we've looked at like digital robots and things like that, augmented reality type things, and we have played with those in the past. I think my area is not there at the moment. Mine is still more towards the AI, and where we see our future is how cool, and this is what we're working towards at the moment, that I'm a passenger, I'm in my car, and I can message Babs, Birmingham Airport, what service, and say, hey, I'm on my way to the airport, I'm flying with Jet2 to Malaga, I'm running late, I need help. And actually, we see that AI, we've got so much information. We know where our check-in desks are. We know the security wait times. We know baggage belt. We know we've got so much brain power at the airport. So how cool would it be now that actually AI responds, goes, hey, Stuart, don't worry. Check-in's open, ready for you. You're going to park in car park 1. Once you go up and go there, head to zone A, go to check-in. However, we can see you're running late. So security queue times currently are 20 minutes. You could get through in 5 minutes if you buy a virtual queue. So there's a commercial opportunity, but it is adding value to the customer because it might be something they want. Would you like to purchase this? Yes, please. Brilliant. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Go through there. And actually, we've reassured that customer. We've told them where they're going to check in. We've given them a service. We've upsold them a service which actually has added benefit to them. And now they're happily going to the airport, being navigated through AI. And actually, what you do is hand off and go, hey, Stuart, once you're through security, if you still need my help, let me know. And actually, I've gone through security. I go, actually, I still do need help. I fancy a burger. Brilliant. Stuart, burger, why don't you go to Giraffe? Do you know, so that's what we see it, that we already have all that information.
Yeah.
And where we see AI is, it's obviously that is, if we can make that work for the customer, amazing. But also from our comms team, you know, I've built CRM systems. I've done the old version where you have to type in every synonym, every keyword, etc. With AI, we don't need to do that. You know, we plug it into our policies or procedures, which we're happy for customers to access. We plug it into our website. We geo-fence the areas of information we want it to have access to. And actually, it can then answer. As long as we've approved that that information is available to the customer, it can self-police and self-manage. So from that point of view, we think it's a massive step forward. And I think from that, going back to our vulnerable customers, it allows Joe's team in our comms teams to really support those vulnerable customers who the AI is not helping because actually it's much more sophisticated, and we can then put real people remotely or physically to put in front of them. I think that's where the efficiency comes from it.
Well, I think that's a great idea. I know there's a lot of criticism of LLMs and very, very clever AI taking away humans' ability to critically think. But let's be honest, when we're in an airport, most people don't critically think. It's like,
No.
I certainly don't when I've got 3 kids screaming, so
Yeah.
I lose my critical thinking ability. Having an assistant, right, would be or an AI agent. That's really what it is, and
Yeah.
we get very, very used to using them over the next 2 or 3 years. So,
And I think really importantly, though, it's not about our colleagues are still going to be vital to this. This isn't about becoming more efficient by decreasing staff numbers. The opposite is actually this is going to make our staff much more efficient.
yeah,
They can actually enjoy their role much more because they are going to feel valuable because they're going to help those most vulnerable customers.
Yeah.
And actually we believe the more we use the AI, it will actually probably tell us you need more people in these areas because that's they're the touch points that customers really need physical intervention and help. So we think there's a real balance there between digital and physical support.
yeah.
It's just on that point. Someone's asked a question in relation to AI. Are airports falling behind other industries in adopting AI technologies? due to risk factors, or is it a lack of confidence in AI? I don't know whether or not Joe or Ollie, you've got a view on that.
I think I think there is definitely a valid point in terms of security concerns around bigger AI in particular. So there definitely has to be a safe policy and a safe arena. I wouldn't say that we're necessarily falling behind, but our approach does most definitely have to be extraordinarily thorough and robust, and that takes time because of the challenges and the threats, that are unfortunately posed to civil aviation. So there is so much going on in airports, whether it's in test beds, on small scale. But I would agree that, you haven't seen this huge roll up using AI, but the testing and the exploration is most definitely there, but it has to be secure.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with Joe in that for an airport, safety and security is first and foremost, right? And so as long as we deliver that, then everything else will take care of itself. But look, let's not be naive to the fact that things like AI are going to revolutionize our sector like they're revolutionizing every sector. And I don't believe for a second that aviation's falling behind. I actually think the opposite. The amount of innovation that I'm seeing from across the aviation ecosystem, from the way airlines are using it to ground handlers, to aircraft manufacturers, to airports, it's phenomenal. And I think it's beginning to explode like it is across the whole economy, and it will continue to do so.
And it'll probably be a fundamental part of the entertainment factor as well for
Indeed.
airports and for all of us, I think. So
and that's the thing, Jonny. The possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
Whether it's from an experiential point of view, from an operational point of view, from a sustainability point, it's just endless.
Yeah.
And it's just going to continue to grow and grow.
Yeah, well, going back to Joe's point right at the beginning, talking about the need for technology from the for aircraft technology. I fundamentally believe that AI is going to design much more efficient engines and better carbon capture systems, and I'm already seeing it. I'm such a sort of AI geek that I see this stuff all the time, and it's incredible what it's changing, how quickly, both in not just in design and engineering, but also in medicine and everything else. So, but I have kind of faith that that's going to be at least one good thing that's going to come out of AI is
it's kind of scary at the same time, though, isn't it? Because we've created these robots, but now we've plugged in these really clever brains.
Oh yeah.
And there's going to be a whole lot of dependence and reliance on these things. We're all assuming it's going to work in the way we intended, but there are unintended consequences. So to Joe's point, in an incredibly highly regulated environment, we perhaps won't be as quick as others in deploying it, but there's absolutely loads of it going on.
Jonny, we've got time for one more question, and someone's asking the question which has been raised in relation to what Leon said about owning data, and it's that question that I think we've talked about in the past. Really, is whether or not creating an app for an airport is the right thing to do, or whether or not it's not the right tool because of the level of use and the level of investment. So any views on that?
So yeah, at Birmingham, we've decided that's not our direction for now. So majority of customers who fly through Birmingham fly once every 12 to 18 months. So we recognise if we did have an app, which is actually a huge investment, they'd probably install and delete, and we wouldn't actually build a relationship with them. We wouldn't actually benefit from it. But what we have done working with Quba is obviously we've got a brand new website, and actually when you open it on your mobile app, when you're in the airport, it looks and feels like an app. And actually that's the direction of travel we think we want to go, and actually have QR codes and different things throughout the airport that would then you scan that and it opens up your phone and it looks and feels exactly like that. And we have to accept the airlines are really good at this. The airlines are great apps, and I think what we want to do is be more integrated within the airlines app, so our information is pushing through there, and as long as that's supporting the customer, it doesn't really matter where the information is coming from.
Yeah. Leon, just finally, what's your kind of take on this?
Similar, obviously, different airports will have different business cases for building an app. From our perspective, we've not been able to build a business case strong enough to have one just yet. But equally, for us, it's about being able to communicate to passengers on their preferred channel at the right time. So as long as we can have a way of building that relationship, going back to those value exchanges we talked about earlier, you know, there's certain unique bits of information that we can share around queue times, etc., etc. Perhaps airlines don't have access to, and just using it as a tool to kind of enhance the experience, but also as a starting point to build that relationship, but always keeping in mind what their preferred method of communication is, making sure we deliver against that, and always useful in terms of what we communicate to them. So it's kind of the exchange of value is fair and gives us kind of that incentive to keep them engaged with us throughout the life cycle.
Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much to all of you for joining us today and giving up your time. That is obviously very, very much appreciated. And thanks again to Mark England for joining us and regaling us of some of the horrors of moving Team GB around, but it sounded like he did a good job. But all of you, thank you very much indeed, both from Birmingham and from Luton. It's really, really appreciated. And obviously, thank you everyone for joining us as well. On the screen is a QR code which you can scan, which will take you through to Quba's website, and where you can get in contact with us. You can sign up for our mailing list as well to make sure you're at the next event that we put on. But we're gonna cut it there and say thank you very much. And it's Friday, so enjoy your weekends and have fun. And we'll see you soon, no doubt. But thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.